Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Carl Tsukahara. He is the Chief Marketing Officer over at Optimizely. Carl, how are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you, Logan. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure to be chatting with you today, Carl. We're going to be talking about really the rise of the digital experience economy and how that's affecting B2B marketing teams and what they can do about it. Before we jump into today's topic, I would love for you to give listeners a little bit of context on both yourself and what you and the team at Optimizely are up to these days.
Logan, thank you. Yeah, my name is Carl Tsukahara, as I mentioned. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Optimizely. I have been in Silicon Valley for about 25 years. I've been CMO 5 times. I think part of this has been in public companies, but also in a lot of private companies as well. I'm a bit of a technology geek as a marketing person, so I actually come from an engineering background. But really, I love the concepts of using data and evidence really to help me make decisions as a marketer, whether that's deciding on campaigns, thinking about how we can have a better conversion rate through the funnel. But really, I really love to think about how do we build a great team, but really build that kind of data-driven culture into the operation itself. Generally, one of the things I think it's been important for me in my career is I really like to think about customer in. And so I feel like as marketers, our role is to make sure that we're thinking about the entire customer relationship, even from pre-acquisition to acquisition to the way we serve the customer and really helping other parts of our business, including sales and customer success and services, really do a good job implementing, driving adoption, renewals, continued success with the customer. And like our founder, Dan Soroka, says, when our customers win, we win. And that's really fundamental to the way I like to think about the marketing function as well. From Optimizely's perspective, we are in a space which we call digital experience optimization. If you wanted to simplify that in its form, you would say that everything you do that faces a customer in the digital world, whether it's your website, your mobile app, if you're a media company, an OTT or IoT, how do we make it perform between 10 and 10,000% better? And when I say performance, I mean business performance. How do I drive more revenue, increase share of wallet, time on site, conversion rate for campaigns, but really drive 10 to 10,000% more business performance from everything you do in digital. And we apply that really through an experimentation platform so you can test and learn different ideas and really know when you do deploy a new experience, it will win. It will win in driving the business outcome that you want. Or you can avoid deploying a loser. So you'll know that you're not going to affect things like e-commerce revenue or the performance of your site by deploying a new experience.
You guys are definitely doing some great work. And I know a lot of marketers and a lot of leaders of fast-growing teams that would love what you guys are talking about in predictability in the changes that they make to their customer experience, all sorts of things that you're dealing with in a high-growth environment. Predictability is always a good thing to have. So you guys are doing fantastic work in this space. And as we talk about really the digital experience economy, as you and I were chatting a little bit offline, we talked about some of the facets of the direct to consumer or B2C market that are influencing the way professional buyers in B2B buy. And so I wanted to touch on those a little bit, talk about how they're influencing B2B buying decisions, and then, what marketers can do about that. The first one that I know you wanted to touch on is this idea and the trend toward self-service. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, Carl?
Yeah, sure. I mean, because we're all consumers, Logan, and as a consumer, we have a smartphone, we have a web browser on every day. We're wanting to become more digital first, and a lot of that, is really pushing us towards a model of self-service. And that's a fundamental thing that we learn about as consumers. But I can certainly say for us, it affects how we deal with our business customers as well, because I think Forrester years ago has said that about 60% of any evaluation takes place without the brand or the company knowing that a B2B customer is evaluating. So whether we like it or not, that the way that they interact digitally with us is fundamental to acquisition. It's fundamental to servicing this customer, fundamental to us selling to them. And really, that's a trend that I think probably started more in B2C, but I don't think we can deny that that's really in the middle of B2B today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are already touched on, another trend, and that is the digital first transformation. As we look at, there are a lot of different touch points that that we have to optimize for when customers are coming in to a marketing funnel, a sales funnel, beginning the customer journey with us. Talk a little bit about that transition between physical and digital.
Yeah, I mean, I think even though most of us in B2B have, service-oriented call centers where it's really more of a person-to-person interaction, I mean, it's probably no secret that, customers today, whether they're millennials or, different demographics from a personal perspective, or whether or not they're small businesses or large enterprises, they want to, have this kind of different sort of servicing environment with us. And so this is complicated because if you think about the whole customer funnel, right? There's a kind of a pre-acquisition phase. There is a warming up or brand building phase. There's an acquisition phase. There's a customer cross-sell phase. There's a servicing phase, support phase, et cetera. If you kind of take that whole journey, I would say a customer makes with you over time, and hopefully this is a multi-year journey that takes place again and again. But then you kind of multiply that by what is really about that experience. So when I talk about the experience economy, what I'm really trying to say is you've got to get this digital experience for that customer right. And so because you're dealing with somebody on a mobile device, you're dealing with somebody on a web browser, you're dealing with someone who is either authenticated or non-authenticated on your digital properties. You may be starting to deal with people doing IoT, where you're getting kind of feedback and signals from them from various types of digital devices. And then you think about this whole experience being kind of having a top and a bottom. There's stuff in that interaction that is very visual. If you're running page search, how do you optimize that landing page and think about the image types and colors and form fill outs, progressive profiling to get this right. But there's also stuff on your site or in your mobile environment that the customer doesn't inherently see visually. It might be stuff like pricing. It might be stuff like bundling, the ability to get self-service content for support. But that whole experience, if you multiply this all together, you're talking about multi-steps in the journey. You're talking about a visual and maybe a little bit more hidden portion of their experience. So things like pricing, even though that may come to the forefront, it's not immediately visual. It's more of a code-based thing. And then you think about this, it's quite complicated. So if you're trying to get this right, the whole concept of sort of winging it out there and praying that it'll work is very difficult. And this is something that, B2C customers or companies have done for a while, but now we see it in B2B brands as well at scale in our customer base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the entire economy is moving towards the preference towards subscription, and therefore the customer journey, as you pointed out, does not end with acquisition. It doesn't end with that bottom of the funnel. There's customer success and support, and hopefully them becoming an advocate. And so when you look at that, the experience matters that much more, not only to the lifetime value of that one customer to your organization, but also to the growth of the business as you rely on retaining customers longer, them becoming advocates in the market. So what are you seeing, Carl, some of the best B2B brands that are taking a look at these factors and how they're influencing the buying journey in B2B? We've talked about self-service, managing digital and physical, the rise of the subscription economy. Are there some examples you could point to in the B2B space, brands that you work with that are taking a more thorough look at really looking at the entire digital experience from end to end?
Yeah, I mean, we're really proud to serve a lot of the great B2B brands out there. You know, we're happy to have customers like Hewlett Packard, IBM, like Atlassian. These are customers of ours. And I think if you take the B2B customers as an aggregate, I think the ones that really think about this the right way is they think about it from a customer in perspective, meaning that there's various teams in an organization, but if you're always thinking about your customer journey, irrespective of whether or not, you're the top of the funnel team or the bottom of the funnel team or whatever the case may be in your organization, how do we make sure that you're optimizing this journey for them, that you're really applying really an evidence-based process to get this right? Because what we believe here at Optimizely is that because this is complicated, even if you're thinking about just a portion of your customer journey and customer funnel, you've got to test and learn around this. So what we're seeing these successful companies do is really do what an Amazon or do what a Netflix does in their culture, and that is experiment and test different ideas. And by controlling the rollout of those campaigns or ideas or new experiences, they can collect data and really know in advance more proactively which ones are going to win. And I think that's what it comes down to, Logan. If you can know ahead of time what the winning experience is, and frankly, what the loser is, you can deploy the winner and not the loser, because I think that's really what these great companies are doing now is really adopting what we would call an experimentation or testing culture, so that inherently before they roll it out, they've tested it, not just with user testing, but with data and statistical evidence that the one that they pick to roll out will be the winner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned HP there, and I think about, their model. They have direct to consumer offerings. They have channel partners, resellers, a lot of different segments of their business. And so they're not simply looking at, one complex buying journey. They're looking at many of them. And so rolling things out in mass without testing doesn't make a lot of sense when you start to see how complex it can be to really manage that experience from end to end, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think, irrespective of which of our customers on the B2B side, we deal with, the most successful ones are thinking exactly in the way that you described. Like, how do you really take an end-to-end approach to this, even down the channel? I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can even improve the productivity of channel partners or other people that are your touch points. And this is where I would say the digital to physical convergence starts to take place for customers as well. There are a lot, in B2B, obviously there's a lot more, I would say, face-to-face, kind of interaction to get sales done. But how do you really influence that by having a great experience earlier in the funnel? Even things as a marketer, like how do you test things like landing page conversion rate? How do you test things like symmetric messaging? How do you test things like an offer strategy? Again, at the end of the day, they may be just creating top of the funnel for your business that you close out in the field with a physical sales team. But again, if you start to think about how these experiences come together and how you can make sure that, the spend that you're making in the marketing side is really going to convert proactively for you versus, testing, versus not testing, I should say, then I think you've got a lot better chance to try stuff at low risk, increase your velocity, which is super important, and really let evidence instead of the highest paid person's opinion, kind of drive your strategy on marketing.
I love that. That's a great point to really avoid and to be more systematic in your approach. I think, I talk to a lot of marketing leaders that are trying to become more data-driven in every aspect of what they do.
All right, today's growth story is about search engine marketing. Clear Company is an HR tech company that was doing a lot of things right. Their messaging was clear, their product produced incredible results, but they were struggling to drive qualified traffic to their website. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first 12 months of working with Directive, Clear Company was able to increase their qualified lead volume by 157%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
One of the things I'm thinking about here, Carl, is how customer experience spans the entire buying journey, as we've talked about. So everything that we're touching in marketing, but it also involves sales, as you alluded to as well, involves customer success or customer support. View eventually, there being an overlay of customer experience, a department, if you will, or someone at the C-level who is in charge of customer experience, where, the traditional marketing, sales, and customer success. It's funny, I say customer success traditional when it's actually somewhat of a new role and new function, right? Where do you see that? Do these three other roles kind of roll into customer experience? Who kind of owns it? Is it everybody's job? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that and kind of how you guys think about it cross-functionally when it comes to the customer experience at Optimizely.
Yeah, so here at Optimizely, it's everyone's job. And, we have folks that run the various functions, customer success, obviously marketing and sales, but we all have a responsibility in our own world to give them a great experience. And that for us, that spans things like, our acquisition funnel on the website. It spans our community. It spans our self-service support capabilities. So it really spans everything that we do. Now, again, we're cheating a little bit, Logan, because, this is basically our DNA as a business, right? So I think we're extremely focused on making sure that we're, we think customer in. I mean, our founder, Dan, always uses the mantra saying, when our customers win, we win. And I think we have that kind of philosophy, whether it's in the digital world or in physical. But what we see structurally with, the larger an organization gets, I think the more we see kind of, at least centralized functions inside of functions. So as an example, you might have an optimization team inside of marketing or inside acquisition, if that's not part of marketing, or inside the services team. On occasion, you'll see, really an uber chief digital officer that flows across the entire business. But I'll tell you, I think in B2B, those structures are still formulating now. I mean, I think they can all work.
Right.
We see organizations have what I would call a center of excellence model, where you have a centralized body that serves all of the different lines of business. So I think we've seen a lot of different models. I think in this sense, I think this is where B2B is a little bit behind B2C. I think in B2C, we see much more focus, probably more investment in this area today. But again, like some of the brands I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot more attention to this, and then really an understanding that I would say this experimentation or testing culture really is fundamental to being good at digital. I mean, Jeff Bezos himself talked about it from Amazon's context, saying everything they do at Amazon generally starts as an experiment, and they try to learn, at scale before they take stuff out to the market. And I think it's been a huge winner for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're doing some they're doing some things right that we can definitely emulate in our own organizations. I love how you say you're cheating a little bit, but obviously you guys are doing something right as well, Carl. With this customer experience being in your DNA, and I think the most successful B2B organizations will find a way to structure it. But to your point, it may look different. There may be a lot of different models, but the winning organizations are going to have that full range customer experience in mind and always top of mind, being tested and tweaked and improved consistently if they're really going to win. So I love what you're talking about here and sharing with listeners to take practically back to their organizations. If anybody listening to this, Carl, would like to stay connected with you or ask any follow-up questions on this topic today, what's the best way for them to reach out or stay connected with you?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn always works. Thanks for asking that, Logan. I have a pretty active presence on LinkedIn. I try to. And in addition, they can just send me email. It's Carl, C-A-R-L, @optimizely.com. And I always welcome, discussions or relationships with fellow practitioners like myself in marketing, and happy to, basically test and learn some new relationships as well.
Yeah, I love it, Carl. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Logan. Appreciate the time as well. Thank you.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.